There's good economic value in requiring someone to teach the Old Testament. Now, for a Christian, once you become saved, you're free to read from Genesis to Malachi, from Matthew to Revelation, because it was written for you. And the Jewish people can't understand it. And since they can't understand it, God expects the Christians to teach them. But most Christians are too afraid, because they don't know what the good news is and who the good news is for. The good news is for both Jews and Gentiles. For them first. Because even though I say we can skip over Exodus to Malachi, they are still God's chosen people. Deuteronomy 6:4 and 7:6-9. 14:1 and 2. And Romans 9:27, 11:5 through 21 or 22. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verses 12 through 17. They're still God's chosen people. Handpicked. Handpicked chosen people. Not no free will. Handpicked. Gentiles are free will. Every last one of us. There are no elected Gentiles in the Christian church. You become elected after you join. You got to have membership in the Christian church before you can be elected. Other than that, you're on your own. And while I'm at it, let me say, if you go to hell, you send your own self to hell. God ain't sending nobody to hell. Reverend Lee, why you keep making those statements? Is God still sending people to hell? No. You send yourself to hell. God demonstrated his love for us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us and was resurrected from the dead, so that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. All Gentiles are a part of the whosoever's. And a remnant of Jews, those handpicked Jews, are members of a part of the whosoever's. So, John 3:3-8 tells me that there's nothing in the Old Testament that can give me this new birth that Jesus is talking to Nicodemus about. Does that mean that there's something wrong with the Old Testament? No. It was never designed to give us the new birth. That's what got Martin Luther in trouble back in the 16th century, so 1517. What got him in trouble? He said we have to be born again through faith in Jesus Christ. So, where are we? We are going back to the beginning. And I have some other visual. I have a visual on, let me see. I have a visual on number 5. Now, I know that's kind of small. I'm going to get a large print next time, so I'm going to talk off camera for a couple of minutes while we focus on the visual on camera number 5. And up at the top there, it says, we're talking about back to basic Christianity, where we can relearn Jesus Christ, about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ awareness. for a fuller, more thorough knowledge of him. And we have a team theme there, engaged to win. Only the truth of the good news of Jesus Christ saves. That's why we entitled this show, The Good News of Jesus, because only the good news of Jesus saves. But the problem is, many people don't know what is the good news. And under our caption, we have said Jesus is the good news. Now, in order to go back to the beginning, back to the Garden of Eden, you must be a part of God's post-Pentecost Trinitarian eternal plan of salvation. You can't go back to Eden if you are not a part of God's post-Pentecost Trinitarian eternal plan of salvation. Jesus says, go ye therefore, teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Ghost. If you want to go back to Eden, you have got to become a Trinitarian believer in Jesus Christ. And I want to thank you for that. Now, what's the good news that will allow me to go back to the Garden of Eden to recapture, to reconnect with God in a spiritual way that was lost in the Garden of Eden? I mentioned that in order to do that, you have to be a Christian. You can't go unless you are a Christian. You got to stay in this world. But only a Christian can go back. So, let me tell you the key to this post-Pentecost Trinitarian eternal plan of God. I don't have much time, but I'm going to try to get it in this, and I'm going to bring you back from Genesis all the way to the 25th day of July, 2011, in the next 10 minutes. Now, at one time, I'm talking about Gentiles, and I'm also talking about all nations, and I'm also talking about Israel. At one time, everyone on the face of the earth were an enemy of God and condemned to an eternal death, which is the second death, eternal separation from God, from his power and from the glory of his might. At one time, everybody, I'm gonna narrow it down. Everyone from Genesis chapter 3, verses 22 and 24. Everyone from Genesis chapter 3, verses 22 to 24 were an enemy of God. And they remained an enemy of God until the arrival of Jesus of Nazareth in Matthew. Even though God did choose to save some people, to establish a relationship with some people, pending the arrival of Jesus of Nazareth. So that, what does that mean? That means that when Jesus of Nazareth died on the cross, he died on the cross for the sins of the whole world, past, present, and future. Because in the Old Testament, from Genesis chapter 4 unto Malachi, everybody was saved based on God's foreknowledge of what he was going to do to rectify the situation in Jesus Christ. And he did. Genesis to Malachi, all had sinned and fall short of the glory of God. God chose Israel to be the one or the people through whom he would bring his Messiah to make everything right. Romans chapter 9 verses 10 called it the reformation. When God made everything as he originally intended. And Hebrews chapter 10 verses 1 through 18, God stopped dealing with Israel in the Old Testament in a covenant relationship. He tells us that he did. He actually stopped doing it with John the Baptist. Because John the Baptist is Elias, that was supposed to come before the Jewish Messiah. And John the Baptist came as Elias, the forerunner of the Messiah. So, that's because why was everyone sold into sin from Genesis to Malachi? That was because by one man, Adam, sin entered into the world, and death, separation from God by sin, that's that spiritual separation that Jesus told Nicodemus he must reconnect by sin. And so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned from Adam to Jesus. Now, here's one thing. What did the death of Jesus accomplish? Why is the death of Jesus good news? I'm glad you asked. 1 John chapter 3, verse 8. 1 John, chapter 3, verse 8. I'll read 7 and 8 for a lead in. The Apostle John is talking. Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteous, who that doeth righteous, who that practice righteousness is righteous, even as he, Christ, is righteous. That seems like double talk. But it means that you can't practice righteous and you're not righteous. You can't practice something that you're not. And you can't become righteous until you are born again. Because God says all of man's righteousness is as a filthy rag. And we go to Romans chapter 3 verses 9 through 20, and it tells you the state of the world that Jesus came into. The state of the world. You have to make a distinction between Israel because he'd already chose them centuries earlier. But they were their sin, they still were sinners until Jesus came. And Jesus came to fulfill the promises that God had made to the Old Testament fathers, the prophets. But when Jesus came, that was fulfilled. So John chapter 3, verse 7 and 8. Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteous is righteous, even as he is righteous, even as Christ is righteous. He that committeth sin is